Remember that big space station the Emperor was building? Well, after 19 years, it's finally done. But guess what? The Rebel Alliance managed to steal some blueprints for it so they can figure out how to blow it up. The Empire isn't too happy about the stolen plans, so they send a huge Star Destroyer to chase down the Rebel ship. Instead of just blowing it up right away, which would be a quick end to this story, they decide to board the ship and get the plans themselves. Leia, being smart, hides the plans inside R2-D2 and sends a message with him. Then Darth Vader shows up and starts questioning the crew. When one guy doesn't tell him where the plans are, Vader kills him. Not the best way to get answers, but that's Vader for you. He tells his stormtroopers to capture everyone alive. Meanwhile, R2-D2 and his friend C-3PO escape in a pod. The Empire doesn't shoot it down because it has no life signs, so they think it's empty. Leia gets captured and brought to Vader, but neither he nor the Emperor realize she's his daughter. You'd think they'd notice, but no. Leia's brave though. She says, "The Senate won't stand for this. You can't attack a diplomatic mission." But Vader doesn't care. He's like, "Sure, keep talking," and they still can't find the plans on her ship. They figure the plans must be with the escape pod, so someone will have to go to Tatooine to get them. Vader's like, "Not me, I hate sand. It's rough, it's coarse, and it gets everywhere." So R2-D2 and C-3PO end up going their separate ways when they crash land on Tatooine. Unfortunately, both droids get grabbed by Jawas, who are like tiny scavengers collecting junk. The Jawas plan to sell R2-D2 and C-3PO to Luke and his Uncle Owen. Funny thing is, Uncle Owen doesn't even recognize C-3PO, even though they've met before. Guess droids just aren't that memorable? Anyway, Luke ends up cleaning them up. While washing R2, he finds a message from a mysterious lady who's in trouble and asking for help. Luke doesn't know it's his sister, but he thinks she's cute and decides to help her. Gross, right? R2-D2 tricks Luke into removing his restraining bolt by promising to show him the rest of the message. Luke is excited, but gets interrupted by his aunt and uncle, just as he's about to get started. Classic teen moment. Later, Luke tells Uncle Owen that he thinks R2 belongs to an old guy named Ben Kenobi. Obi-Wan didn't bother changing his name when he went into hiding, so Luke figures it's him. Uncle Owen, not a fan of old Jedi, tells Luke to stay away from Ben. He also says Luke can't take that pilot job he wanted and will stay on the farm for another year. Aunt Beru is a bit more supportive, saying Luke is just like his father, but Owen seems worried, remembering how that turned out. Feeling down, Luke goes to find R2, who has already left on a mission to find Obi-Wan. Luckily, R2 can't fly, so Luke and C-3PO catch up with him the next morning. They're attacked by the Sand People. Luke gets knocked out, and while everyone is fighting, Obi-Wan shows up. He makes a weird noise that scares the Sand People away. Luke wakes up to find Obi-Wan there, even though Obi-Wan doesn't recognize R2-D2, who has helped him a lot before. Maybe he just thinks all droids look alike? They get C-3PO, who's having a breakdown saying, "Just leave me here, I'm done for." And Obi-Wan finally starts talking about the Jedi. Obi-Wan tells Luke that he used to fight with Luke's dad, which should be a huge deal for Luke, but he doesn't react. Probably because Tatooine is so isolated that they don't talk about the Jedi here, and Owen and Beru aren't exactly sharing the family history. Obi-Wan decides to give Luke his dad's old lightsaber and says, "Your father wanted you to have this when you were old enough." Obi-Wan also casually mentions that Darth Vader killed Anakin, but he doesn't say that Anakin is actually Vader and went full dark side, murdering Jedi kids. He doesn't mention that Luke needs to learn this to help his sister. Probably didn't want to scare Luke with, "Oh yeah, your twin sister might also be on your dad's hit list." Luke wants to go with Obi-Wan, but is worried that Uncle Owen might get mad. Obi-Wan, being chill, just offers him a ride, like he's picking up a hitchhiker. Except, this ride comes with a lightsaber and destiny. Meanwhile, on the Death Star, the Emperor is fed up with the Senate complaining about blowing up diplomats. His solution? Fire them all. I am the Senate. So now it's just military people showing off their shiny new space station. They're excited about how scary the Death Star is, until one guy mocks Vader for not finding the rebel plans or the hidden base. Bad move. Vader's like, "You're underestimating the power of the Force," and uses a little Force choke on the guy for being disrespectful. Tough crowd. Back with Luke and Obi-Wan, they find a Jawa convoy that's been attacked. Luke realizes the Empire must have found out who bought the droids and is heading straight for his family. Instead of sticking with Obi-Wan, Luke decides to go alone to save Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen. Good plan, kid. When Luke gets back to his home, it's a disaster. The house is burning, and Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen are gone, cooked by the stormtroopers. He heads back to Obi-Wan where he sees R2 and 3PO with the Jawas and decides, "Alright, I'm in. I've got nothing left to lose." They go to Mos Eisley to find a ship. The place is full of stormtroopers, but Obi-Wan uses his Jedi mind trick like it's nothing. He says, "These aren't the droids you're looking for," and the stormtroopers, not the sharpest tools in the shed, let them go. They go to a cantina where droids aren't allowed. Inside, Luke gets into trouble with some shady guys. Obi-Wan has to step in. He pulls out his lightsaber and cuts off a guy's arm. Luke thinks Obi-Wan is the coolest ever. They meet Han Solo, a pilot with money issues, and his furry co-pilot, Chewbacca. Before they can even talk about a ride, a bounty hunter named Greedo shows up. Greedo warns Han with McClunky, which means, "I'm about to shoot you." Han shoots first and walks away. They hurry to Han's ship, the Millennium Falcon. Just as they're about to take off, a rat-like creature tells the Empire where they are. Now they're being chased, but Luke still finds time to annoy Han. Meanwhile, on the Death Star, Leia is having a terrible day. She's taken to Tarkin, who looks ancient, so let's call him Grandma Tarkin, and insults him. Tarkin doesn't like that and threatens to blow up her home planet, Alderaan, unless she tells him where the rebel base is. Leia gives him a location, but Tarkin decides to blow up Alderaan anyway. He wants to show off his new toy. Alderaan goes boom, and Leia gets a crash course in aggressive negotiations. Back on the Millennium Falcon, Luke's trying out his new lightsaber and getting blasted by a training droid. Obi-Wan says, "Use the Force, Luke," and hands him a helmet that blocks his vision. They arrive at where Alderaan should be, but surprise, it's vanished. Before they can even react, they get pulled into the Death Star's tractor beam. Vader shows up with his spooky Sith vibes and senses Obi-Wan's presence. The crew hides in some smuggling compartments, then sneaks out, grabbing stormtrooper outfits to blend in. Classic disguise move. Obi-Wan goes off on his own mission to disable the tractor beam, leaving the others to be bored. R2-D2, being his nosy self, finds out that Leia is on the station and scheduled for execution. Luke, all hormonal and determined, wants to rescue her. Han's not interested until Luke mentions Leia is rich. Never mind that her entire planet just exploded. Details, right? Their plan? Pretend Chewbacca's a prisoner. Because nothing says subtle like dragging a giant Wookiee into a detention center. They storm in, blast the guards, and destroy the cameras. Luke finally reaches Leia's cell, and the first thing Leia says is, "Aren't you a little short for a stormtrooper? Maybe don't sass the guy rescuing you, Leia." The stormtroopers are closing in, so they jump into a garbage chute. Brilliant move, until they find themselves in trash water with an octopus-like creature that thinks Luke might be a tasty snack. Of course, Luke shows up again, because plot armor. Now they're stuck in a trash compactor with walls closing in. They try to reach 3PO on the radio, but he turned it off. So they're floating in this trash heap like it's a Star Wars escape room. Somehow, none of the crew gets flattened by the trash compactor's debris. Seems like only the walls are allowed to squish things. Luckily, R2-D2 saves the day by shutting off the compactor just before they all get turned into space pancakes. Meanwhile, Obi-Wan is sneaky beaky and manages to disable the tractor beam without making a sound. As they try to get back to the Falcon, stormtroopers are waiting, so Han decides to chase them down the hallway. Because running headlong into danger is always a great plan. Surprise, it's a trap. Han and Chewie barely escape by closing the blast doors just in time. Back to Obi-Wan, who turns a corner and bumps into Vader, who's been waiting for this moment. Vader's all like, "My powers have doubled since last time we met," while Obi-Wan's thinking, "Didn't you get burned last time we met?" Vader's still clinging to his "I'm the master now" attitude. Their duel? More like two grandpas waving their canes around. It's nothing compared to their fiery duel on Mustafar. This is more like watching two kids swat at each other with Christmas wrapping paper tubes. Yawn. Meanwhile, the rest of the crew is trying to sneak onto the Falcon, but there are stormtroopers guarding it. These troopers, however, are more interested in watching Vader and Obi-Wan's slow-motion fight than doing their actual job. Thanks to their distraction, our heroes sneak aboard the ship with some ninja moves. Just when everything seems to be going smoothly, Obi-Wan lets Vader strike him down. The stormtroopers, finally snapping back to reality, start shooting at them. Obi-Wan vanishes in a poof of Jedi ghostness, casually telling Luke to run while Luke's just standing there getting shot at. Not the best survival instinct, Luke. They finally manage to take off in the Falcon, and Leia, who just watched her entire planet get blown up, tries to comfort Luke, who's sobbing over a guy he barely knew. Meanwhile, Han gets back to business, announcing they've got company. Han's like, "If this chase goes on any longer, we're all gonna end up as crispy critters." But Vader's got his own plans, and it turns out they're being tracked. Leia, ever the strategist, figures this out and says, "They're tracking us. But hey, let's head to the secret rebel base anyway. What's the worst that could happen?" She's got the Death Star plans and is banking on finding a weak spot. Let's hope she's right, or this rebellion's gonna be over before it starts. The rebels reach their base on the moon, but guess who shows up? The Death Star, looming on the other side of the planet. Instead of just blowing up Yavin and causing chaos, they orbit the moon, giving the rebels a chance to discover a weak spot in its exhaust port. Everyone's like, that's impossible, but Luke's all, it's just like when I used to hunt frogs back home. The meeting wraps up, and Luke finds Han packing up to leave. Han wants to pay off Jabba the Hutt, the gangster who runs the pod races. Luke calls him a selfish jerk, and Han's like, I just want to stay alive. Luke then tells Leia that Han's leaving, and Leia's all, okay. Luke's a bit hurt, thinking they were best buds, and starts missing Obi-Wan. He's like, I wish Ben were here. Leia kisses him to shut him up. Luke bumps into an old buddy, who questions if he's up for the suicide mission. Luke's like, of course I am. They try to give him another droid, but he's attached to R2-D2 and claims he's his new best friend. They head to the Death Star in their X-Wings, but the approach is a nightmare. They have to navigate a tight trench and dodge turbo lasers. TIE fighters come out to play, and lots of them are getting blown up. One poor pilot's last words are his friends calling him Fat Hawkins. It's all very chaotic. Seeing the mess, Vader decides to jump in and help. The Gold team starts their trench run, but Vader's hot on their tail, saying, this is where the fun begins. He takes out one pilot, and another is like, let's get out of here. But Gold Leader is all, too bad you're on a suicide mission. Move right so I can get a clear shot. And then Vader takes out the Gold Leader. Now it's Red Team's turn in the spotlight. Red Leader gets knocked out, and his wingmen drop like flies. One of them's like, I got him, but misses and gets turned into space confetti. Luke's up next, but his stabilizer's on the fritz. R2's working his circuits off to fix it, but Obi-Wan's ghost shows up like, forget the computer, just use the Force. Luke's like, sure, let's ditch the targeting system and go full Jedi mode. Meanwhile, the Rebel base is having a collective meltdown, thinking, we're all gonna die, and you're turning off the one thing that might save us? Seriously. To make things worse, Vader's hot on Luke's tail, close enough to give R2 a laser facial. The Death Star is gearing up to blow the Rebel base to smithereens, and Vader's all set to finish Luke with a dramatic, this is the end for you. But then, bam, Han Solo swoops in out of nowhere. With some seriously lucky flying, he hits a 7-10 split, taking out Vader's wingman and sending him spinning into space. Guess he's gonna need another tow truck to get him back. Luke takes his shot, and surprise, the space torpedoes are now homing missiles. They make a sharp turn and hit the Death Star's exhaust port right on target. Boom, the Death Star explodes just before it can fire on the Rebel base. Talk about cutting it close. Leia decides to reward Luke and Han for their bravery with shiny medals. Chewbacca's there too, but of course no medal for the Wookiee, classic disrespect.